Good morning. Today we begin the book of Lamentations. It's a short book. We look at chapters 1 and 2 today. We finish it with chapters 3 through 5 tomorrow. So it's a short book, but it's filled with pain. It's lamentations, lamenting, pouring out our hearts, we're looking for consolation of deep wounds, and sorrow is upon us. And so it's the story of the heartbreak of the people of Israel for the destruction of Jerusalem, of the temple, of how the enemies have come in and just, devastated everything. And it's just, it's they're pouring their heart out is what it is, and that's what a lament is. I mean, it's not a complaining so much, but it's, the heartfelt brokenness of being or feeling abandoned by God, being destroyed, overtaken by their enemies because of their sin. And it begins with how lonely sits the city that once was full of people. How like a widow she has become. She was a great among the nations. She was a princess among the provinces, and has become nothing. It's just, you can feel the emotion. You can feel the heartache. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has no one to comfort her, So all of the people that are left there, and anyone that may remember Jerusalem can do nothing. They are helpless against the enemies. All of her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. It's that total loss, total abandonment. No one cares. And what a horrible feeling. And when no one cares. It's I sing a song. Nobody cares. Nobody wanted him. At Easter time, Lent. During Lent, not Easter because that's a happy time. But it's just that feeling that we get sometimes that, we're all alone in the world and there is virtually nothing for hope. The roads to Zion mourn, verse 4 says, for no one comes to the festivals, and that was, God had appointed these festivals, the festival of the Passover, the festival of feasts. There were several times a year that the Jews would come to Jerusalem for these festivals at the temple, and the roads would be filled with people and travelers and, with donkeys and families and laughter and, everything going on. But here the roads are desolate. They're empty. There's no one on them. No one comes to the festival. Her gates are desolate. Her priests groan. The young girls grieve. There is no joy in Mudville, to quote something from Babe Ruth or whatever that was. But, her enemies have become her masters. They prosper because the Lord has made her suffer. It's, God has come to the end of his patience with his people, and he has let the destruction happen, just as he had told them through the prophets. And then verse 7, Jerusalem remembers in the days of her affliction all the precious things that were hers in days of old. She remembers. She remembers the glory. She remembers the prestige. She remembers the festivals. She remembers the good times. But they're not there. She remembers all that were hers in the days of old. When her people fell into the hand of the foe, there was no help. They couldn't resist them. They were overcome by these enemies. And then verse 8, Jerusalem sinned grievously. And it wasn't just the city of Jerusalem. It was, it wasn't the city at all. It was the people. And it wasn't just Jerusalem, but the people of the nation. Jerusalem, and the Judah, the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom, and they couldn't follow what God would have them do and taught them. verse 10, enemies have stretched out their hands. She has even seen the nations invade her sanctuary, for those whom you made to enter. So, I mean, the temple, the inner temple was only available for the Jews, and that's even in Jesus' day. There were certain parts of the temple that the Gentiles could be in, but so much of the temple was off limits unless you were Jewish, unless you were an Israelite. But these foreigners who are not allowed in these holy places have completely taken over and completely destroyed. All her people groaned. It's just, you can feel the pain and the agony. And it's, in the last couple of weeks, I've had 2 funerals. And this lamenting, this mourning, this hurt, it's just like that when you lose a loved one. I mean, I don't like to use that word lose. When a loved one dies, and that person is no longer with you, you remember, you hurt. And this is whoever is writing this. Some people say Jeremiah, and others say he couldn't have, and others say, well, different people wrote it. But it doesn't matter who wrote it, because the feeling of loss, the feeling of hurt, the feeling of emptiness, of loneliness, of nobody cares is real. It's there. And we have all felt this. I mean, we know where these writers are coming from, and the destruction that came, and to see the devastation, from on high, he sent fire. It went deep into my bones, and and this is the hurt. I mean, it doesn't just hit and bounce off and it's gone. It goes deep within us, and it's like, Jesus, when he heard that Lazarus had died, and he saw that, he was moved deep within his bowels, right to the very core of your gut, and we have that expression, but it's that deep grief that just seems like there is nothing that can fill it. There is nothing that can fill that void, is the way they're feeling. And some of these verses are kind of like Jerusalem itself weeping. Verse 16, for these things I weep, my eyes overflow with tears, for a comforter is far from me, one to revive my courage. My children are desolate. This is the people crying out. This is the country saying, we just can't. We just don't know. I mean, it's remembering the good times and the sorrow that comes, and we know that in time, this sorrow, this deep feeling of mourning, this loss of, it never goes away, but it becomes something that we live with, and we go on with life in spite of that big loss that we've had. Verse 20, see, O Lord, how distressed I am. My stomach churns, my heart is wrung within me, because I have been very rebellious. In the street, the sword bereaves, in the house, it's like death. It's just, I am distressed, my stomach churns. That's, we get, that's just like really deep down in our guts, we're just empty. Just empty. And then the last part of verse 22 of chapter 1, you have dealt with me because of my transgressions. My groans are many, and my heart is faint. You've dealt with me because of my transgressions. And this is where we look at, it's, God sent Jesus because of our transgressions, my transgressions. I can't just say yours, because, they're mine as well. And this is the lament, because of my transgressions, because we were not able to be faithful, because I did not listen to the word of the Lord through the prophets. And then chapter 2 starts with how the Lord in his anger has humiliated daughter Zion. He's thrown down, the splendor of Israel. He has not remembered this land of his, just the hurt, the pain that, it just pours out of these writers. And we can think of an awful lot of songs that we hear on the radio, and of this loss, of this brokenness. And it just goes on, verse 4, he has bent his bow like an enemy, with his right hand like a foe. He has killed all in whom we took pride. It's empty and gone. Verse 8, the Lord determined to lay in ruins the wall of Zion. He stretched the line. And this is talking about the plumb line that was stretched. And, back in Isaiah 28, God stretched out, the plumb line was there. And Amos talks about a plumb line. And, this is the plumb line. It hangs true no matter what, On this side is one and on this side is the other. There isn't, you can't make that plumb line crooked. This is the way it is. And, the Israelites broke to the side of the plumb line. Last thing I'll mention today is just verse 11 again. My eyes are spent with weeping. I'm just, they're just exhausted with weeping. They're just, I don't have any tears left. I've cried my eyes out. I've cried my heart out. I've got nothing left. My stomach churns, my bile is poured on the ground. Just the deep pain that this person is feeling because of the destruction that has come upon Jerusalem because of Jerusalem itself. This is just the pain and the agony, the deep hurt that comes from the realization of their sin.